And then that's where, at the time, he was Detective Sergeant John Leclerc, but now he's a lieutenant. But he gets involved, and he knocks it out of the park. I mean, as far as his investigation.
Absolutely.
At the beginning, as you mentioned earlier, he doesn't want to give up any of his any of the names of any of the people involved.
And he's Maplewood?
He's a Maplewood.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
He calls an attorney. He lawyers up. And my memory is it was Joe Hogan, who's a great attorney.
Character, too.
Yes. And he, I'm sure he explains to Joe all that we've just talked about, but he also expresses that I'm afraid that if I talk, then I'm coming in on myself as dealing drugs and burglarizing that house. And Joe, I believe, I wasn't in on the case yet, believe it or not. It was Christian Stevens, who is now a Court of Appeals judge in Missouri, who had the case originally. But I had my eye on Todd Beckman for years because doing what I was doing in the organized crime unit at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I'd sit down with cooperating co-defendants all the time and say, throw everything you got out on the table and let's sift through it. And I can't tell you how many times I heard the name Todd Beckman.
Right.
But we just didn't have enough back then. But, you know, when different people tell you the same thing different times, it starts to ring true. So when I heard on the news that Todd Beckman had been arrested, I immediately called my colleague Christian Stevens and said, can I second chair you? And Christian was in the violent crime unit and I was in the organized crime unit. And he said, yeah, that's fine. And then shortly thereafter, Christian resigned and moved on to greener pastures. And I called his supervisor and I said, can I please keep this case? He said, you're the only one in the office that knows anything about it. So yeah,
Right.
it's yours. So I sort of brought it down to the OCDF unit, to the organized crime unit. And where was I going with that?
Well, well, no, that was good because that's how you knew the name. And at the time of the, you know, when all this starts to break, one of the things John Leclerc does is Athanas III finally comes in with Joe Hogan and lays the whole thing out. All of what we just told. They lay out the story of all of what we just told you. And John Leclerc then goes, okay, I'm going to call DEA. And he calls the duty phone and the duty group gets involved. And they do their preliminary investigation and find out that the FBI has an open case on Todd. And what that means is sometimes you think, okay, the FBI or the DEA have an open case. It doesn't mean they're following you around every day. It doesn't mean they're doing anything every day. It means they have enough credible information to just simply open up a case on a guy. You get enough information, time, like you said, time and time again. Somebody's like, hey. And then anytime you would get further information, you can add to that. And anytime you get really, really hot information, you can go out and act on it. And that's where the FBI was involved in this, because they become involved in the takedowns and the arrest. But John Leclerc puts all this together. I mean, he gets his call on the night before Thanksgiving. So he has to take his time and get all this together, identify some people, make sure everybody. But now the DEA is involved, and then it's time to
FBI's involved as well.
And then you guys type up a search warrant for the house in Pacific, correct? I think that's where we start.
Correct.
And then what goes down from there? They go out there.
Well, they found all the trappings of what would be left behind from 2 days of beatings. And ultimately, Beckman is arrested.
Yes.
And how quickly after he was returned to his father that this...
I want to say...
Well, they went to the hospital the same day. So... do you know?
But I want to say it was like 5 days later.
That.
About 5 days later, and this all goes down in one day. And like JD said, they do the search warrant out there in Pacific, get paper, get the phone, you get all kinds of stuff. Got some money that was from the ransom.
I want to say they took up a piece of linoleum in the kitchen that was covered in blood too. There's no sense cleaning it up, right?
Oh, what? No, right. Why would you?
So then when they're on their way back, Joe Samogi's with that group, and Joe was a part of the DEA task force that was really involved, and Joe had a big part in this too with John Leclerc. And Joe made it perfectly clear when I was talking to him. He said, John Leclerc did 90% of the work on this. We were all just there helping at the end. And one of the things when they were coming back from Pacific, Joe said that they had arrested Beckman. And how they arrested Beckman is they were sitting on him at his normal residency. And they were sitting on him at his normal residence. He left, and then he was going to another residence that he kept on the side for to
Stab him, Kevin?
there you go. There you go.
That's a legal word.
Legal word.
I don't know what that means.
So it was a rainy, cold day, and like JD said earlier. That was the time of the season. It's Thanksgiving season, and he was trying to get up to his door. He sees everybody coming for him. Now he's going to run to try to get up the door, and he's hitting on his pad. Well, they tackle him, and they get him good. They hit him into the bushes, and he's all wet.
He did not like that.
He was mad about. He was really mad about that. Well, Joe Samoji wasn't there yet. Well, when Joe came up, he ends up talking to Todd. Well, Todd's very mad about this whole being wet, but Joe ends up being the good guy. Oh yeah, they should have never done that. That's fucking bullshit. All that good stuff. Well, and so they take Todd to this thing, and they talk to him, and John Leclerc talk to Todd. They're getting him to calm down and everything, and he ends up signing consents to search for his office, where he says he's got $5,000 of ranch money correctly. And then to describe what happens, it goes down.
Well,
at the
I think
office,
the
John.
interview happened first.
Right.
John Leclerc and Dan Brown, his partner at the time at Maplewood, interviewed Beckman, I want to say at DEA downtown. And it's filmed, of course. And I mean, the first thing you do is lawyer up. And you guys know if I say, hey, I want an attorney, then questions have to cease. And he got close. He said, actually, what he said is, I should probably call Scott Rosenblum. And that's not enough to invoke your Sixth Amendment right to counsel. And a couple times he said, Scott's going to be really mad at me when he finds out I'm talking. And he kept talking, I want to say for 3 hours.
Oh.
And it starts with, I don't know anyone named Lobinger. And I don't know anyone named Ellis Athanas. And then, oh, wait, maybe that name sounds familiar, until it comes to, oh, yeah, I saw him yesterday.
Well, then that's where the whole he loved the word citizen's arrest. He's
Yeah,
like,
this
I didn't tell him. I told him to make a citizen's arrest is what I told him to do.
Big misunderstanding.
Don't you think the narcissist that he was,
Yeah.
that he thought he could charm his way out of
Yeah.
it?
That's-
That's why I didn't think he needed a lawyer. He's too cool for school. And
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. But then he tells them there's $5,000 of the ransom money in my safe at my office. And so they go to the office, and
I think
he
the pistol-
consents to the search.
Right. And the pistol, I believe that they got the
DNA.
DNA off of was in his car that he was used to go to the stabbing.
That's correct. But in the
I'm guessing Rosenblum's still mad at him for this.
Well,
it gets better as it goes on. While this is happening, I mean, they go to his ex-wife's house and pretty much say, "We're searching this, and here's what's going on." The ex-wife called Travis Noble, the other attorney,
another attorney.
yeah, another attorney, and Travis then is frantic about he needs to find his client. And his client, in the meantime, is in the car with the FBI, DEA, Maplewood police, and they're going to consent search where the defendant says, I don't care, you can look. And they don't need a warrant. And they've seized the money, they've taken the money and other items during the search. And Travis eventually finds out, I think it's Kerry Rhodes that calls him, I can't remember, but Travis finds out.
Travis is at the business. When they finally get to the business, he's waiting.
Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
So when they like JD said, they went to the ex-wife's house first. Well, now everything's starting to, the word's out, shit's happening. And the ex-wife called somebody. I think she called Travis. Well, then Travis shows up down at the business. So now he's agreed and he's already signed a consent to search for the business. And one of the things that Beckman asked Joe Samoji, he's like, hey, man, can you please just not make a big deal when you guys go to the business? Do I need to be handcuffed? Can you guys take off all your DEA and FBI shit? and Joe Samoji's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we got it, being a good cop. Well, when they show up, there's the one person they haven't arrested yet. Is Kerry Rhodes sitting in front of the bay of the garage. Well, that whole don't use the FBI thing or the DEA, that went out the window.
Yeah.
There was guns out. The people were getting tackled to get on the ground. So that whole thing was over. But then they go up and they get the the money out of the safe, and then Todd Beckman has to go to the bathroom. Joe Simoji was telling me this story. And so he searches the bathroom to make sure everything's all right. Lets him go to the bathroom. He comes out and he goes, hey, man, I'm thirsty. Can I get a drink? No, sure.
There's a kitchenette in this office.
Tell him what he does when he wants to go to get a drink.
Well, he opens up the refrigerator, and there's his bottle of vodka, and he just starts chugging the vodka.
Oh. Yes. Yes. I need to calm down.
And I think it's Smoji that wrestles it out of his hands.
Yes. And then he later used in court that he let him get drunk.
Ultimately, Travis Noble filed a motion to suppress, a pretrial motion, but he claimed that, well, I wasn't there, but law enforcement basically let him get drunk, and that's why he got so loose-lipped and consented. But the fact of the matter is the 3-hour confession was well before he drank any alcohol.
Right. He did that at the end.
He did it at the end.
So he could sleep that night in prison.
Which was horrible, because that night was supposed to be his daughter's engagement party.
Yeah.
And he kept asking, I'm going to this, right?
What a narcissist.
Well, the other thing, too, is that his son was big into go-karts and racing. Mm-hmm. So he's getting him into this. And that night of the arrest, there was supposed to be a guy coming in from California, an expert in teaching go-kart racing. I don't know if there's such a thing, but there is.
And Beckman needed to pick him up from the airport.
Right. So he was like, can I call my wife to have her go do it? Or whoever. But that was part of the
priorities,
the whole thing. But I want to go back to John Leclerc. Can you give us a little how just great job he did and how it was like dealing with him?
Well, I'll tell you what. Anyone listening to us and what you guys know, this is utter chaos from the very beginning. John just did I had never met John before. Doing U.S. attorney work, it's not often that I meet with municipal guys. It's not uncommon, but usually it's DEA, FBI, something like that. John did an outstanding job of taking all this chaos and making order out of it and making sure the next steps got taken. I can't say enough about him.
That's awesome. Joe Simoji made sure that, when I talked to John a little bit, and John didn't want to come. John's a shyer guy. He says, I'm not a podcast guy.
But he listens, though.
But just from what Joe said, too, is that it was so easy to get involved in because you really didn't have to do anything. All you had to do was just go with whatever he was telling.
At what point did John get involved?
Hospital night. The night he went to the hospital.
And his venue was because this is where Ellis lived in
Maplewood. Correct.
Maplewood. Okay.
And then where's St. Mary's? The St. Mary's in Maplewood?
No,
that's a hospital he went
because
to.
they called that department, whoever that is.
Is that Clayton?
Is that Clayton?
Yeah, it's
I
Clayton.
don't remember.
But at first, the Maplewood
Clayton.
uniform officers got it, and they immediately realized this is way, way over our head. And then called John, who was a detective sergeant at the time, and him and what was it, Brown's first name? Dan Brown, who's now with the FBI. And then they get involved, and then they call all these guys in. All the people we talked about, they interview these guys before DEA or anybody else does. They interview Athanas. They interview the mom and dad about the ransom. They interview the car places. They interview Enterprise Leasing because that truck was involved. So they did a ton of work to make this easy to go do all these takedowns. And they, JD?
Absolutely. The real genius that I saw in the beginning was that 3-hour interview that John Leclerc and Dan Brown did, and just opened him wide up. It was unbelievable.
So the case was so solid that even the best attorneys in the city of St. Louis knew that there was no way this was going to go to trial, that they tried to cut the best deal they could. Correct?
I can't speak for Travis, but yeah, I think that's the case.
Okay. And then now, do you remember who cut deals to lessen their sentence? Do you know that? Or
yeah,
he prosecuted me.
I know,
okay.
And who?
Blake and Caleb Lobbingers both, which we all thought was kind of funny at their interviews, started crying. I remember having to get a box of Kleenex. I do.
They're tough guys. Come on.
They were. They did, and Nick Rhodes did not.
Kerry
Rhodes did not. Nick Rhodes plays for
I don't know where you got that, cuz.
Duran, I think.
Even if he does, I don't know.
So
no fact checking here.
So Rhodes did not, and Zach Smith that we talked about that came to the house that night, he was originally charged in the conspiracy, and that was AUSA Stevens that did that. He came in and spoke as well, and based upon what I heard, it was a 50-50. Am I going to be able to prove that he came down and did the tasering? But I could prove that he saw the scene and didn't call the police. And that's a crime in and of itself. So I amended his charge to that, and he pled to that. But in the end, there was nothing that Todd could do really to help himself.
Well, he's still in jail, obviously.
He got a 20-year sentence.
And he's still got a long ways to go.
Yeah, I think he's down in Texarkana at a federal facility there.
Now, any of the rest of them is still in jail? Are they out by now or no?
They're all out. Kerry, I believe, got 60 months. In federal court, we do months, not years. I didn't know that until I became an AUSA, and I had to do my 12s times table all over again. I think he got 60 months. Blake and Caleb, I think, got 7 years, something like that. And I don't know that times 12, so I'm just going to use years on that.
Right.
And Zach got a minimal sentence, but he did get sentenced. He did do time.
Hey, Jan, on something that's so crazy and so many jurisdictions involved and so many people go in different directions, how do you lay that out? And how does it have to be filed as a state charge first? Okay.
No. So there's dual jurisdiction. If there was state offenses, that's for sure. But they can bring it to federal court. State could file it also. Everyone says, well, that's double jeopardy if the state and the feds have the same offense, and it's not. That's been solid law for 150 years. If the same jurisdiction tries you twice, that's one thing. But the state jurisdictions, counties, whatever, usually step back if the feds are going to take the case. But they don't have to, and we weren't in the job of stepping on their toes or anything like that. But
So who was like the actual arresting officer on this?
Clerk?
yeah, I guess.
I mean, he's the main investigator. Everybody that got arrested at different times by different people.
And I know that the guy that, if my memory's right, the guy that put Beckman in the bushes as he was trying to get in the door was Owen Cunningham, who's FBI, and he's built like this table.
Yeah, the FBI was they had that dope case on him. So they had, like, you remember Brian Joseph was a part of the FBI. I think he was part of the arrest team. They arrested Beckman as he was going into the stabbing cabin.
There were a lot of officers at that.
Thanks, JJ.
After this, tell me what that is.
Now, do we know, I guess you probably would never know this, but what is Elias doing now? And how scarred? Ellis, I'm sorry. How scarred up would he be? I mean, I guess he got permanent.
There was going to be permanent
facial
damage, that is for sure. I know there was nerve damage, and I'll tell you how I know this. The civil attorney ultimately called me and told me about the civil proceeding that was going to go on and asked if he could have some of the evidence from my vault, and that went up higher up the chain as to whether he could get that. And I don't know if he did or not, but I know there was a lawsuit filed. There was permanent nerve damage in his wrist from the tightness of the zip ties and the length, I'm sure.
Did he lose any teeth or anything like that?
I don't think he lost teeth, no. But
His
he
hair
has to be scarred.
Did his hair grow back?
I haven't seen him in a minute.
Dude, I got my hair shaved at a fundraiser back in the day. I was Tony Creamy.
I remember that.
Battling cancer.
Now, it looked like it did now. He had that long flowing hair.
Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
and
I couldn't
I
believe he
was
did it.
26 at the time. You know, my hair meant a lot to me. and so it was late at night. This is like 11 o'clock at night. And they started doing the hair shaving for money. And people were doing it for 100 and 200.
Had you been drinking?
Yes, at this point in time. And then I said, well, if you guys come up with $1,000 cash, I'll shave my head up. Well, that's when I learned that every policeman has a rich friend that may be just lingering in the audience. And they came up with $1,000 within like 5 minutes.
Oh, God.
Wow.
Were you there?
No.
I think I threw in money. But then I got the hell out of there because I didn't want anybody
Yeah.
try to get me to shave
Chop
my
your
hair.
hair.
And I can remember my wife, and I had a goatee at the time and a little beard on the side. And my wife looked at me and she goes, don't take this the wrong way, but you kind of look like a penis right now. Oh, no, I won't take it the wrong way. I went home and immediately shaved off my goatee and my beard, put on a hat, and I wore a hat the next month. But
It grew back. Obviously, it grew back.
Yeah, grew back. Now I'm an old guy trying to rock long hair. But no, and then the other thing I found interesting was during the interviews when I was reading some of the reports and whatnot, is that when everybody kind of got out of control, but they always limited what they did inside the house.
That's on every case.
Yeah,
we know it as minimization.
Well,
right?
I went down. That was some crazy. Like Beckman was like, I told him this was crazy. You guys are out of control. He said he didn't do nothing but tell him. I only made him make it. I just wanted him to make a citizen's arrest. I wanted him to call the police. Yeah, okay.
One last question: does Beckman still own all these things, or do you have to get rid of those?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a forfeiture count in the indictment. So anything that was gained criminally had to be given up to the government.
Right.
But I think at that point, most of those businesses were franchised, and I know the Massage Luxe, the massage parlors, a lot of them changed the name because of the black eye this gave the business.
And I think there was a lot of lawsuits after that too from the franchisees.
Yeah, I believe so.
These people were like, "Hey, man, this is crazy shit." Now our business is suffering because this moron did what he did. But yeah, and then. It's just a very interesting case, and like you said, you had heard that name before a lot, the Todd Beckman
so
name.
That's how it ends. It's how it begins and how it ends. I used to have my TV set to come on at 4 a.m., and that's Channel 4 news started at 4 a.m. Now, I wouldn't get up, but I could hear it. I'd doze off, back sleep, wake up, and ultimately it would get me out of bed. And I heard the names Lobinger and Rhodes and then Todd Beckman. Well, about 6 years before that, I'm driving in my Prius. Actually, it was no. This was before I could afford a Prius. It was a Yaris, a two-door Yaris.
Sweet.
And I'm on 40 headed from my home in Lake St. Louis to the office downtown. And here comes this BMW. Just, when you look in your rear view, you can tell this guy's just going to scream by you. And he did. And the plate said Tanco. And I already knew that guy was into something. And I honestly said out loud, I'm going to get your ass one day.
Oh, you honked at him all right. That's the ultimate honk. Here's 20 years.
So the day of the sentencing, Smogy's with me, Leclerc's with me, Brown's with me. I can't remember who all that are going to testify at the sentencing. And we're going up in the elevator, and I'm telling them this story about the car passing by. And I said, someday I'm going to get him. And the doors opened up, and I said, guess what today is?
Today's the day. I love it.